Great. Has anyone got any questions or comments or scenarios that they want to?
Yeah, do you use the reduction method of
the munter?
Yeah.
The munter. The 3x3 I think is good. Yes, for professionals. The problem is it's not as simple to apply as what I've tried to come up with, and I think there's some other systems that work a little bit easier. I think for teaching, if I had a whole day with a group, I would go use the 3x3. Is anyone familiar with that? It's Werner Munter is a Swiss mountain guide that was actually I think originally hired by the military in Switzerland to help them after a whole series of accidents happened to the military, to help them come up with a go or no go decision. And it's he has a formula, and it's quite involved. It is quite complex, I think. What's been shown is through the research is that if things are a little bit difficult to apply out in the field, people don't apply them. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I find it really difficult to use. Definitely when you're in a ski resort, because it's what you say. It takes too much time to follow that system.
Yeah, so but it is a good one, and Werner Munter will say that if you really want to be simple, just don't go on slopes above 30 degrees, which is challenging, and it gets back to that problem. And I was talking last night, a similar discussion with a woman in the audience who said her boyfriend is a guide, and often his clients won't take him to go to the tour or anywhere where there's low angle slopes because they can do it on their own. And so what would be interesting to discuss with you all, the kinds of scenarios that you're confronted with clients, if you've ever felt like pressure to go. Well, I think we all feel pressure because our job, especially if we're taking people off piste, is to deliver good snow, isn't it? As best we can. Yeah.
Yeah, hi Henry. It seems to me that, just tuning into what you've been saying, it's nothing to do with really understanding the snow. It's the psychology of humans.
There's one of the experts, I think it was Bruce Tremper, some of you might have read his book, Staying Alive in Avalanche Terrain. He said, at the end of the day, avalanche safety is more about more along the lines of knowing about yourself than about the snow in many ways.
I mean, I'm involved in the driver training industry. It's my real job.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm skiing.
Driver training.
What I've been doing recently is getting more involved in the psychology of driving.
Yes.
So I like to relate this to that. So when I'm training advanced drivers that are meant to be able to drive, we talk about speed limit.
Yes.
What's the speed limit on this road? 60. So what are you going to do? 70. So I mean, it's like, to relate it back to that, it's the psychology of wanting to go a bit fast on the road because it's a bit of fun. Yeah. And it's pretty obvious if the speed limit is 60, it's 60.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it is pretty obvious if it's going to be potentially dangerous. But it's us assessing the risk.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It is hard to do. It's strongly hard. Which is why 1 in 1,000 will get caught.
Well, yeah, and that in terms of the human factors, etc., is defined. We have a very specific context that's very difficult to deal with on off-piste, and it's called a high consequence, because if you do something wrong or if something goes wrong, where the consequences could be deadly. It's not like you're going to lose a bunch of money or whatever. It's worse than that. So high consequence, but low validity or low feedback. So it's not like in carpentry or something like that, where if you make a mistake, whatever you're working on either breaks or the evidence, every bit of sandpaper you use or chisel work that you're doing, you're getting feedback all the time, and it's a constant interplay. And sure, having a mentor in carpentry or whatever is important, in any profession or area of expertise. The problem out on the off-piste is that we don't get that feedback. And we generally depend on everything else we do in getting instant feedback in order to adapt to things. but you can do the wrong thing over and over and over again on the off-piste and not get the feedback. And that really is one of the reasons why we tend to be, lazy isn't the right word, but a little bit too self-reassured about our past experiences. And if you think about it, it's generally, in the accidents that maybe you've had close calls or mates that have been in accidents, it wouldn't have been the first time that they were taking a big risk or being in a similar context. It's just that that was the time when it happened. So we're fighting against something that's quite difficult to fight against. And the same thing which I found in surgery, aviation too, where and driving, where the human factors, most accidents are avoidable and could have been avoided, but the complication is that if we have bad practices, they're not instantly reinforced as errors. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's why that, along with a very human trait, is to affirm ourselves as it's called, affirming ourselves as being good. So if we ski a slope and we've shown our clients a great time, we have a tendency to attribute the success to ourselves and skills, rather than think, oh man, according to what's out there, I was very lucky to have gotten down there. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of very experienced people, mountain guides, off-piste professionals, get into accidents, and afterwards people say, well, they should have known better. Well, of course they knew better, but they got drawn in for these reasons that I just showed you today. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, do you see in the future, because just comparing sort of Europe and the States and Canada, when I see in the States and Canada, obviously in a resort you get off-piste areas that are patrolled and made safe.
Yeah.
Do you see in Europe, in the Alps, in the future, more resorts going towards that? Because everyone's skiing off-piste with all the easy kit to ski off-piste, and they have no training, so they're going straight into the dangerous off-piste, you could say.
Yeah.
Do you see resorts, or should they provide safer off-piste patrolled areas that are made safe? Do you see that ever happening?
Well, okay, so the question is basically, do I see it happening, and do I think it's a good idea?
Yeah. Should it happen?
Should it happen? Yeah, well, we all see it happen in the free ride zones, or they're called all kinds of different things, free ride zones. There was one thing called in Teen, the spot, ski the powder of Teen or something. Do I think it's, I don't really have much of an opinion. I tend to not go to these places, except maybe the first day after a snowstorm I'll go there, but they tend to be within a couple hours get tracked out, and then bumps form on them. And unless you have like a meter of powder, the bumps are you want to go somewhere where there's no bumps, So and then but that doesn't solve the problem of going further and further out, like exploration and adventure is part of, and innovation and new ideas is part of the theme of today's talk, and that's really the way skiing and I think all of you and all of our clients want to go, is they want to adventure out further and further and further. So the free ride zones for learning a bit of off-piste, fine, but they're not going to be satisfied. We're not going to be satisfied as people who do off-piste or off-piste professionals aren't going to be really satisfied with that, I don't think. I mean, but one thing I will share with you, where I really realized that despite the fact that I try to be aware of myself being pulled into these human factor traps, these heuristic traps, and I realized that I was not being very as successful as I thought I was being, was a few years ago. I had a new client who luckily booked me out for a week, not just one day. I want to come back to the one-day wonder phenomenon, but they booked me out for a week, and this dad with three teenage girls. And he said, look, Henry, we love the off-piste, we love adventure and everything, but my kids are the most important thing to me in the world, and I don't want anything ever to happen with them. And you know what? I looked at him, and I didn't say this, but the relief that I felt, I was so relieved that the pressure was taken off my shoulders. And at the same time I was thinking, well, I obviously haven't mastered this human factor thing, because I was having pressure on, and it was a very unstable time, like it's going to be like the next snowfall, beginning of sort of the season and everything, and new snow on top of a weak layer and everything. I'm like, where am I going to take these people and stuff? So I think that's something to reflect upon with yourselves as well. I'm not going to provide any other answers other than the formula there that I came up with, because it works for me, and that's what I share with people during the talks and things. I'll go back to it here, because it is quite a simple list that I can refer to at night and in the morning as well. And I even try to encourage the clients now to give me feedback like that father. Because in the airline industry, you have co-pilots for that very reason, is to help the expert see where they're going wrong, because we do, and most of the time we're out there on our own with the clients, and they're looking at us like making, we're trusting us to make all the right decisions, and we're only human. So having feedback, I would encourage you to involve clients to the point it's appropriate. To give you feedback, ask you questions, talk about what's going on with the snow and everything, what their expectations are, and when they say, well, is that safe? Instead of just sort of swatting them away, oh yeah, no, don't worry about it. We have a tendency to do. I say we, because I've been in that scenario too. It's just like, oh gosh, stop asking all these questions. Let me think. But encourage them to come in, and that can help keep ourselves in check. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask slightly from the following up with the gentleman's point in the front, that do you think some of maybe the complacency with clients is because there's over the last 30 years, there's a huge change in technology, the way skis have been designed, boards have been designed, the fact that Avalanch equipment is much more available, the fact that if you have an ABS pack on, oh, that's going to save my life, that because there are these more patrolled areas, that, oh, I'll be fine, there's not going to be an avalanche, and that people are just complacent within their behaviour towards the risks.
I think that contributes to it, definitely. When a lot of us, I look around, a lot of you all are sort of my generation, we learned to ski and got into all this and learned to ski off-piste on these little narrow things that look like toothpicks. You see them out there now. And it took a long time to get to a point where you could ski, and you had to, the technique side of things took a long time as well, to get the clients to a level where they could actually ski off-piste. And so all during that time they were exposed to stories, and there was a much longer time for learning. Now an athletic individual can learn. I've seen it with seasonaires, especially young like chalet staff, never skied before, and within 10 weeks or so, they're cruising around off-piste on snowboards definitely, but even with the wide skis and stuff like that. And free riding and all the aura that's always been around off-piste, Office of Tourism, our ski schools, showing photos and things of off-piste. So yes, that's led to a complacency, I believe. All of that combined with, again, I keep coming back to the fact that most of the time nothing will happen. And I'm very much aware that, that a lot of people think that I'm a bit of a scaremonger, because I'll say, it's going to be really dangerous, like last January, beginning of January, all throughout the Northern Alps. Really weak layer of snow, fresh, and we had a drought, fresh snow, and most of the time nothing happened. There was a few accidents, but most of the time it didn't happen. I mean, I'm not downgrading. There were some tragic accidents all around, especially in the Northern French Alps, Verbier, etc., some tragic ones, but compared to the amount of thousands of people going in thousands of places where nothing happened, there were relatively few, in my opinion anyway. Does anyone have a counter argument to that, or a disagreement?
Well,
yeah?
Yeah, I mean, last season there was an avalanche in Boreas, and it was all open and made safe, and they bombed it, but then it still slid. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, post-control avalanche is a real.
Yeah, it came into the piste, so it's amazing that
on an open piste.
To my group, I ski fast and came across a pretty flat blue piste.
Yeah, and did someone trigger it, or?
No, it was from above. It was wind loaded, and it should have really been blasted.
Oh, and it wasn't blasted.
It blasted nearby, but it hadn't blasted this bit when it was loaded. Took one of my trainees out. She was right, she stayed on top and got a helicopter off.
Wow.
spent the next 2 hours searching the area just in case there were any other.
Yeah, because that in theory shouldn't happen, and that's a whole other sort of area of the Avalanche game, if you like, is controlling for secured areas, and one of the reasons why I didn't continue in that vein of Avalanches, because you have to worry all the time about the post control or opening a run if you haven't controlled the areas or whatever. But yeah, that's scary. And I think, and I'll get to your question in just a second. One thing for you also to remember, when there's a weak layer like it's developing right now on north shaded slopes and things like that of the depth floor, that makes predicting the instability of a slope that much more uncertain, much more uncertain. And so I think what I tend to try now to gravitate towards, and when there's a lot of uncertainty out there, is the 30-degree slope angle stuff, the really concrete things, the terrain traps as well, you know, holes, cliffs, and things like that. Avoid those kinds of things, and that's definitely the way that the next snowfall where I'm going to start out. Because remember also, with the depth floor layer there, there's not going to be any skier compaction on that. In most, because it's not enough snow for people to be skiing on in a lot of these regularly traveled off-piste itineraries. So it's going to be very unstable, very unpredictable, and I think that's something to keep all of us to keep in our minds. Yeah.
Do you think there's a lack of pressure on time when schools sell certain things and then the instructor has to deliver, but they don't have enough time to actually deliver that what the client wants within that time span, because there's pressure on, you know, the cost of what we charge, etc. So, for example, ideally it'd be great to go out the whole day, but that's going to cost you this much. But I can only give you 2 hours, so let's go here.
Yeah.
That puts a lot of pressure on yourself, because actually we go here, we could go up there. That's it, you know, and suddenly you're making the wrong decisions, which is what you're talking about here, based on the setup at the start and how it's set up.
Yeah.
It's set up poorly, so potentially you could fail because the way it's set up right at the beginning.
Yeah, I think for sure, and that's what I was getting to with the one-day wonders. I get a lot of people, more and more it seems, booking out for their 1 day of off-piste of the week, and if you don't know them, and you haven't you know, you don't know what the conditions are going to be, and it's such a luck of the draw if the conditions are going to be appropriate, or isn't the right word, but you know, adapted to what you want to kind of deliver. So I think yes, there's a lot of upstream work, managing of expectations, they call that in business, and expectation management, I think, is around that. So schools, are you saying ski schools, or like schools like in the UK?
Well, I've had examples when I've been in Courchevel, and you could go and do the Grand Couloir or something like that. You can get it done, but you haven't had time to go and explore it. You haven't had time to talk to people, etc. So do you make that decision and go there or not go there? And then you don't know your client that well, so you make the decision, you go there.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a scenario, I've been off-piste, and it was a very basic thing actually. It was, he fell over and lost his glasses.
Yeah.
And he couldn't see.
Yeah.
And we were off-piste and he couldn't see.
Yeah.
And suddenly, everything is then drawn down to that. It makes your life then very stressful.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have that time to get to know that client, to test what their skill level was before you put them into that environment. So if you go straight to that environment, suddenly you're opening yourself up to a big can of worms, which the whole thing can fall apart on you.
You know,
and especially when it's a group, you know, you get different.
And then there's
levels.
Different, and then other people have paid, and then, you know, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And while you're talking, I'm thinking about last night. There's a couple of mountain guides came to the talk I gave at the Patagonia shop there. There's a big national French General Assembly for mountain guides, and apparently the big theme for them is a simple answer: no. We're renunciation. What they're saying. Apparently they're going through the long evolution of decision making, Munter 3x3s, and assessments and this and that, and the whole thing is coming full circle back to you just sometimes need to say no. And whatever can make that the most comfortable for you, being able to renounce one thing or another is I think really important within this whole context. and expectation management. And I know there's a question over here, but I want to also just to give you a classic example, which in my opinion was a big expectation management problem and commitment. It comes down to that heuristic of commitment. And it was, do you all remember in the media about 25 years ago, there was an instructor from a ski school I was working at called Snow Fun in Val d'Isère, and we were, had a continuing education, continuing professional development group of GPs, and there was 6 of them were killed on a trip between Tignes and Champagny, doing what was called the Tarentaise Tour that many of you have done. And the person, the instructor, Hugo, who took them, had been, and with all of us had a habit of doing this, is building up the Tarentaise Tour as the thing that was going to be the thing to do for the end of the week. And that was, it was a commitment to that objective that ruled out everything else. You know, the whole ski area was closed the day before due to winds and all kinds of other things. And there was lots of obvious clues showing that really that shouldn't have been the right decision, but everyone's expectations were there. And I'd worked with Hugo. He was a very good professional, but he was very much, you know, this is this and this is this, which is fine, you know, and that's something that's validated in our everyday life. People who stick to what they say and do what they say they're going to do are valued and are often complimented and promoted for being people who are reliable. But in this case, it killed them, and that really, in summary, is a perfect example, like building up expectations or commitments that supersede, that overrule what we really should be focusing on, which is the environment and safety. And that is why, according to all the research over the years in the off-piste and avalanche domain, why experienced people make errors that lead to some very, very tragic results. And with this research, I keep referring to research, it's been proven that we're not alone in this in the off-piste environment. As you just said, in your real job, you have, in driving, there's parallels. In aviation, there are, in military, etc. And this is an area that I'm taking Henry's Avalanche talk, because you can imagine, once I woke up and smelled the coffee about the fact that training is not enough, I realized that I had to focus on something else. Training is not enough to avoid accidents. And even knowing about these human factors isn't enough. You have to be able to apply it over and over again, so you stick in that system 2 or stick in a logical frame of mind as much as possible. And logical doesn't have to be, you know, a buzzkill, or it doesn't have to kill the fun. Safety is freedom, in my opinion. So thanks very much. And if you have any more questions and things, you can chat with me. I'm going to stay for the first part of lunch here. And again, it's really very much of an honor to be here at this presentation. This is Henry and Avalanche, is enough to Google to come up on my website. I'm going to post some of this stuff in the next week or 2 weeks on my blog. And that was a practical model for ski professionals to get a maximum fun and minimum risk off-piste. The theme for today's talk: have fun and have a great season. Thanks very much.